Hey, it's Matt with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it is Monday. It's August 22nd. This will be our chart lesson for today. And you can see here by starting out with our daily our daily chart with the envelope bands on it that once we turn down here, it's just as I kind of expected we probably would. It's been a pretty severe sell-off, and I think we got a lot more of this to go. We could bounce again before we go lower. It's a possibility. This looks like a fairly strong sell-off. You can see this is the midline, which acts pretty much like a midline on a channel or a 21 EMA. They both act very similar. So that I would basically treat this like the 21 EMA, and we closed through that and actually bounced off the band below that today. So that's a fairly bearish market, considering how strong it was just a few days ago. Again, I'm not ready to say, hey, the sell-off has started and we're going straight to the bottom. We could bounce here again, make another run up before we turn down because we sold off really strongly there, but we were overdue it. I mean, we've been overbought here for all last week. We were overbought for the most part, every single day. Um, Even on that bearish day there, we just barely closed inside that brown line. So no surprise that we finally got that correction we were expecting. And again, I still believe we're going to retest this low here. I don't think we're done yet to the downside, according to this chart. Now, we didn't quite get back up to the trend line here, but it could be that maybe we're not going to make it. Sometimes you don't make it. That shows you the market's weaker. So we'll see. Because we didn't get up there, I'm a little hesitant to say the top is in yet. So it wouldn't surprise me if we made one more run up and did come down off that trend line. We could just kind of work sideways. We could find some support here and work sideways a little bit and then go down. We just don't know how it's going to play out yet, other than the fact the chart says we're going to retest the slow still. And I've been saying that. I said that all the way up here. But you can see it finally has started, or at least it appears to have finally started. So anyway, that's what we're looking at. I think we're going much lower. I'm not saying we're going straight there from here. We may bounce again. We may get some kind of correction again. Although this cyan colored channel here, we did get a close outside a new high. And this is a fairly severe sell-off that went through the EMA, didn't even bounce at it. So that's not a good sign. Now, sometimes they'll give you a little fake out and it'll run up one more time, but we'll just have to see what tomorrow brings and how this continues on. But it wouldn't surprise me at all if we don't continue dropping. It wouldn't surprise me at all if we don't rebound before we go lower. So nothing would surprise me in this market right now. So we'll just have to see. I'm gonna hit this just so you can see these previous sell-offs. Once they turn, they generally were fairly strong, and I think we'll see some more of that. But anyway, let's go look at the 2,000 tick chart and go through the trades and wrap this down. All right, here's a look at the actual 2,000 tick chart for the day, and you can see it's a spiking channel. We actually gapped, spiked, and then headed down. And notice where we opened way down here, which is way below that close. So not only is there a gap here, there's a gap between this open and where we closed, or the low point, not where we closed, but the low point of the previous trading day, which is be Friday's trading day. And so a lot of times you'll get a bounce to fill those gaps. And when we kept going lower today and then stopped to fill those gaps, that tells you the market's really bearish. And so we just continued to trend down all day long until just after 2:30 we had a little correction there. We didn't quite even get back to the trend line, but market tried to correct. So, but this is clearly a spike in channel, and there's actually what we did was we were too steep, we were a little less steep, and then finally we were even less steep. So there's actually three channels here, and then there's obviously smaller channels within those channels. And the market's layered like this, so don't forget that. A lot of times this confuses people. I won't put a smaller channel on there, and they'll say, well, what about this channel? Which one's right, mine or yours? Well, yours might have been right too. I may have left this, just as an example, let's say I left off this green channel coming up here. But I had all the rest of them, and you drew the green one, and it doesn't mean your green one wasn't there. I just didn't draw it. I mean, there's a channel working down right there, a smaller one. I didn't draw it. It wasn't really needed. It didn't really change anything in the chart lesson, so I just didn't draw it. Doesn't mean there's not a channel right there, though. So hopefully that makes sense. But the market is layered, and there's trends within trends, there's channels within trends, there's trends within channels, and so forth. And so all of this meshes together, and that's why price action works on any price level or any time level or whatever, a 2,000 tick, a 1-day chart. If you took the headers off of a chart, you wouldn't know a daily chart from a 2,000 tick chart most likely, because they all look the same. You wouldn't know a 5-minute chart from an hour chart in any market, because they all look the same. So anyway, let's zoom in here and go through the trades, and you see what the day looks like. And 7 o'clock actually came on this lower high right here, and we're going sideways. And so there's not much you could do with any of this in here. So just kind of sit tight until finally you drop down. And you notice you went more in a measured move, and you got a second entry short that failed. But what we did was we came back up here. The way I looked at this, we really tried to go higher once, twice, 3 times. And nice bearish turn down right there off of the lows of this range here. This line is just actually a tad higher there. And it's like we pulled back and tested it 3 separate times. And so I like going short right there. Nice big bearish bar. You can see that big bearish reversal type bar. It actually traded up first and then turned down and went lower. And then we drop all the way down here. We bounce. And this is a little congested. That's the reason I made it green. But you can clearly see we're making higher lows here each time. And we tried to go lower 3 times, and we're still so far away from the EMA. But on a really bearish day, it could drop down again. So you got to be careful with that. I marked it. It's a second entry long, too. Notice this high. Dropping down, you get a first entry, and then you try to go lower a 3rd time, and you get a second entry. And it's clearly a triple test. You can see we tested it once, twice, 3 times. And just being that far away from the EMA, there's a good chance we're going back to the EMA and maybe back to the other side of a possible channel or something. But we've also allowed this yellow channel, it's really a khaki color, to get a break and a move to a new low. And there's a couple of swings in there, so this could be playing out, and you may catch a bottom here. Because of those gaps, the market may try to go to fill those gaps early on. And when it doesn't early on and keeps going, then you know, hey, this is probably going to be a pretty bearish day because we can't even go back and fill the gaps. So anyway, this is too congested here. We run back up, and that kind of sets your trend line. It's still not confirmed until a little further down here. But this green one, you got your break, move to a new high, and you try to go higher once, twice. Look at that big bearish bar. If it breaks below there, we're going lower. It's a failed second entry long. It's technically a second entry short as well, because this is a new swing low. It runs up and you get a first entry, and then it goes higher right there. It actually broke lower on that bar, but you could treat that like a failure. It is a failure, but you could also look at that and say, hey, that's like a second entry short. Because you could just use that low right there, and it goes first entry, and then it goes higher and comes down in second entry. So, but you could also just about get a second entry count from here as well. But even if you just count from here, you got to break below it, and then we went higher, and then we broke below that little double bottom there. So that's still a second entry short, no matter how you count it. And it's literally by the count a second entry if you start right here. And of course, you got your new high, and you try to go higher once, twice, and it fails instantly and turns down on that big. I'd wait for this bar to close most likely. Although on that second entry, I do like it using the engulfing bar. And it just kind of takes off. And then we bounce here, close outside new high, And this confirms that trend line. Unfortunately, you don't get a setup here because this is your signal bar, the green one, and it's a little too risky here. But if you wait a few minutes, you get a first entry long and then a second entry long, and you can clearly see two measured legs there. So that's a failure. And again, it's an engulfing bar. I'd probably wait, since you got that little gap right there between those two. Notice there's no overlap on those two bars. I'd wait and look for a break lower right there, which you do get. And then that's when I would go short. I wouldn't trade that on the engulfing bar because it might have just been trying to fill that gap and it might go higher from there. So anyway, this looks a little like a triple test. Once, twice, three times, but that signal bar is not good enough. It is off the key entry point. It's not a failed second entry long or anything. I think you got to skip that one. Of course, it drops on down here. And again, I don't see any entries until it bounces, comes back, and we're playing this khaki channel at this point. You get a first entry, and again, you get a second entry, but the signal bar is not very good. And you do get a close outside there. It runs to a new low, and then it bounces. And not only do we get a break of the khaki channel and a new low, we get a break of the blue channel here. That's the second channel. We really don't have the third one. You might argue got confirmed here, but I really think you need to call this the confirmation of it. But anyway, you get the break of the darker blue here, and fairly decent signal bar. It's not perfect, but we're a little away from the EMA too. So at a very minimum, we're going to probably make a new low on a trend like this, but it's at least going to snap back to the midline, or the EMA there, I'm sorry. And it just keeps going. And then, of course, we do make the new low, and then we bounce. Notice you get a first entry short, and then you get a second entry short, but you also have a new high, and you get a first entry, and when it breaks higher, you get a second entry long. I marked this one green because sometimes you might get trapped here and get a second leg down. So it's not an ideal place for a reversal, but it is a reversal. It is a second entry. There's a couple of different reasons to like that trade. But if you just wait a minute, in a few minutes you get a true second entry long and a confirmation of the trend line with a great signal bar. Just go long there. Quick, easy move. A few minutes later you get another second entry right at the key entry point. You do get a close outside this time, but it's still still right there at the key entry point. Take that trade. And there's actually a reversal right here, or a failed second entry short. Notice you can try to go short once, twice, again right off the key entry point. Your entry would have been one tick above this inside bar, but this was your signal bar. And only because it's a trap would we use that bar. It's a fairly bullish bar, but it's an inside bar, and usually we wouldn't want to trade those. But on a trap, you probably, with that much room to get out, you'd probably take that trade. Or you would, there's no probably, I would take that trade. I like it. And of course, now you've got your close outside and a couple of moves up to a new high. It sails off, but I don't think that was very convincing. I think that's the problem there. And so notice they run it up and make another new high. I think it actually just makes a double top. I'm going to confirm that just to be sure. It actually doesn't even make a double top. It makes a little bit of a lower high, but it does confirm that bigger, lighter blue channel. You can see we had, again, you could almost argue the confirmation there, but definitely here you could argue it. I didn't mark that because of that channel working up there. It's just really hard to say if it's going to be safe there. It is a little ways away from the EMA, and it is a second entry. And so if you look at it like that, being right off that key entry point, I think you can argue to take that trade. So I'll make it green. But if you just wait a few minutes later, you get a lower high here, and you could also call this a failed second entry. It's not ideal because you like for that failure to be off the underside of the EMA. And so, but with the bigger channel here, if you're seeing what I'm showing you here with the lighter blue channel, you just about can't argue that trade on a failure. It's probably going to run lower. And then, of course, you get another bounce with a first entry and then a second entry, but you also get a close outside a new high on this one. And look how bearish that signal bar is. I like that trade. Again, it's right here at the key entry point, although you do get a break. Technically, the key entry point was right here, confirmation of it, and then we kind of moved higher, but then it just gets right back in there and keeps going. So it's possible that maybe this was a little higher, like so. I originally had it drawn across here, but either one of those, you could argue for either one of those. That's just the thing. You don't know whether you could look at this as a closeout side or not. And we drop on down, then you get a first entry, second entry right there. I don't think you can enter any of this the rest of the way. We're just too far away from the EMA, too long, too much sideways. Although that is a really strong trend there. And you could argue there's a shorter term trend line in here as well. And we come back to the trend line again here, but that's just a first entry, not much room there. Then we're working sideways. We get a close outside the blue one, a couple of legs down. We actually get another leg down here, but that's the first. I mean, you could argue we broke it up here, but again, I'm thinking that I may be wrong, maybe have it drawn wrong, and it's more like that. And so we haven't even had a break outside of this khaki channel yet, if that's the case. And you can see we do make one more push down to a new low here before we rallied into the close. So it leads me to believe this was the proper way to draw this khaki one. But I still don't see anything I see there. There is a second entry short right here, but that's a little bit sideways. I just don't know if I'd trade that or not. We just came off the lows, what looks like the lows anyway. I mean, I think that's really, really risky to try to go short right there. Of course, it does go lower, bounces. Then you get a first entry, second entry, but it's also got a new ISO first entry, and when it broke higher right there, a second entry long. I don't really like either setup. It doesn't set up really nice for the reversal, and it doesn't really, you got to go long into a double top with some more resistance all the way across there for the second entry. So I don't really like either one of those. I marked it green because of the combination of it, but we do run up. We get a close outside, we get a first entry long, second entry long, and it fails. But there's also a 1, 2, 3 triple top, and just being that far away from the EMA, I think we're at least going to snap back. So if you got room there, you may want to take that trade. You may not could get in it because it gaps and just keeps going, but maybe you get a drop a limit order there, a limit order in there, and maybe you get filled on it. And if you did, it was a nice trade, but it took a few minutes. And of course, we ran to the new low here, just barely made a new low, and then we rallied out of there. There's a couple of legs up now. You can see they look like measured legs. And we didn't quite get a measured leg. So, but that's the way I saw it today. Some pretty good trades today. Lots of, I shouldn't say lots, but several clear second entries with the trend, a couple with this trend up here. So good movement's the main thing. Lots of volume and good movement. And I think that we're headed lower still. Again, I'm not convinced we may not get a bounce, but overall I do believe we're headed lower. So we shall see. But we knew we needed a correction. It was long overdue, but over the last couple of days we've gotten it, and it could continue. We could just keep going lower. There's a lot of craziness going on in the oil market right now. The volatility is so bad in oil that it's almost untradeable because you can get wiped out. You can be right and still get wiped out in a heartbeat. So if you do trade oil on the side, be real careful. I'd go to options or something if I really wanted to trade oil right now. And then I don't know if I'd even do that. But be real careful in any of these markets now, because if this downtrend starts back in the indexes, the markets are going to be in steep trouble. A lot of the stocks, a lot of these stocks that rallied are probably going to be in deep trouble again. So just be aware of that. Anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. We'll be back again to do it tomorrow. I'm done for today. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.